You ever wonder about the things people don't say? The questions nobody dares to ask because the answers feel like they'll break something inside you? Tonight, you're going to hold one of those questions in your hands, like a fragile secret folded inside a letter stamped, "Do not open." I'm not telling you a story from far away or long ago. No, this is something whispered in shadows, a truth that almost slipped away beneath the weight of silence and fear. You're the only one who's about to see it, the hidden edges of a story that everyone else tried to forget, bury, or block out. And the moment you look too close, reality bends in ways you won't quite understand. Yet, it began on a cold night in Atlanta, a city humming with life but also steeped in invisible histories, the kind you can't find in books or documentaries but feel in the spaces between the buildings, in the pauses between conversations. You won't find this story in the headlines or official reports, because it's the kind that gets caught in the machinery of something much larger and far more dangerous: denial. It's about a man who tried to do what no one else had the courage to do: escort a fallen black soldier home through airports filled with unseen walls and invisible barriers. The airline didn't want him to, and trust me when I say they were making a mistake that would shake more than just their corporate bottom line. There was a silence that night, the kind that presses on your chest and makes every breath feel borrowed. This man, David King, had already been through enough. The kind of grief that claws at your soul after you lose a brother in combat. The weight of a country that forgets its soldiers the moment they step off the battlefield. But what happened next? That was something no one expected. Because as David stood by the terminal gate clutching the flag-draped casket of his friend, a ghostly chill cut through the air, not from the cold, but from something else, something impossible. And then almost imperceptibly a voice broke the silence, not from the speakers or the staff, a whisper so faint it could have been your imagination, except it wasn't. Tell them, I'm still here. No one else heard it. No one else reacted, but David did. His eyes flicked toward the shadows, searching for the source. But there was only the cold, empty space where a man should have stood. And in that moment, time seemed to fold, a brief crack in reality. When the airline staff tried to block the passage, citing rules and regulations, David's refusal was not just about transporting a casket. It was a fight to honor a life that refused to be erased. And that whisper? It haunted the terminal, the plane, the journey. Like the soldier's voice was caught somewhere between worlds, pleading to be heard. You're probably wondering if David was just a broken man caught in grief. Maybe you think it's the weight of trauma playing tricks. But that's where this story bends, because there was something else. A strange, subtle shift that no one else saw but you and David. Something that makes you question what's real and what's not. When David's young daughter, only 3 years old and usually silent except for baby babble, suddenly uttered a name. One nobody had ever mentioned, not even in whispers. The room froze. That name was a key, but to what no one knew. And yet you feel the cold touch of that secret right now. The thing is, you don't have to believe in ghosts or miracles to feel the weight of this story. It's etched in the spaces between people, in the way grief shapes us, in the shadows that fall across our lives when history refuses to be quiet. And as the plane lifted off into the dark sky, something else lifted with it, the veil that kept this truth hidden. But beware, because once you step through the door of this story, nothing is quite the same. Reality fractures, and the questions you never dared to ask start whispering back. So what happens next? You might want to look away, close this file, pretend it was never here. But if you keep watching, if you stay with me, you'll see the moment that changes everything. A moment where a man disappears, leaving behind only a whisper and a name that could unravel the very fabric of what we think we know. And just like that, the world shifts beneath your feet. You're not just a witness anymore. You're part of it. And the question is no longer whether you believe, but what you'll do now that you know the truth. The moment David vanished, just like that, as if swallowed whole by the thick Atlanta night air, the weight of silence didn't settle. It twisted. You might think that when someone disappears in plain sight, the world would scream, the ground would shake, that someone would shout for help. But no, it was quieter than quiet, like a breath held too long and forgotten. The security cameras blinked with static, glitches you could almost dismiss. Yet the footage itself was missing the frames where he should have been standing. The airline's records didn't mention his name at all, and every witness's memory faltered, as if their minds recoiled from something they weren't meant to remember. You have to ask yourself, was David really there? Was any of it real? Or are you being pulled down a rabbit hole of fractured memory and hidden truths no one wants to face? The truth behind what no one tells you is that some realities aren't meant to be unraveled. Sometimes they're buried beneath layers of denial, or worse, buried in our own minds. And that's when paranoia creeps in. Small things out of sync, audio glitches that skip over parts of conversations you swear you heard, a recording that plays back with whispers, not in the original interview, and memories that just don't line up. You'll find yourself rewinding, replaying, questioning what you saw, what you heard, and even what you thought you knew. Because somewhere between mental breakdown and something beyond, the line blurs until you don't know if you're unraveling a mystery or your own sanity. In those moments, when reality frays and the edges of your mind start to fray with it, you need someone to hold on to, a witness, a guide. But what if that person is just as unreliable as the shadows? Enter Claire Morgan, a soft-spoken woman with eyes that seem to carry the weight of too many unspoken horrors, too many secrets stashed beneath carefully practiced calm. She claims she was with David that night. Or was she? Her story slips like water through your fingers. One minute she recalls vivid details about the casket, the airline's refusal, the whisper no one else heard. The next, she hesitates, her voice catching, as if some memory is just out of reach, locked behind a door she refuses to open. She carries trauma like a heavy coat she never takes off, and you can't tell if it's the trauma speaking or something darker, something that's been feeding on the silence. The more Claire talks, the less you trust her. Her accounts sometimes contradict the footage, when there is footage, and the timelines don't quite line up. She laughs nervously when confronted, a sound brittle and rehearsed. And when she disappears for hours, unreachable, the world feels thinner, more brittle. You start to wonder if she's a figment of David's fractured reality, or worse, if David himself is slipping through cracks you can't see. What they don't want you to remember is that trauma isn't just in the past. It reshapes the present, distorts what we think is real, and sometimes it locks us in rooms of our own minds where the walls whisper secrets we're too afraid to hear. There's no grand explanation here, no neat unraveling of what happened or why. Just shadows that grow longer as you look closer, questions without answers, and a silence that screams louder the more you listen. And in the end, the real unsolved mystery isn't just what happened to David, but whether any of this is truth, or a warning from a mind teetering on the edge, or something else altogether. You're left holding pieces of a puzzle that don't quite fit, feeling the cold brush of something just beyond your understanding, and realizing that the deeper you dig, the less sure you become of everything you thought you knew. And that's where the real fear begins. For a moment, just a fleeting, fragile moment, it seemed like the pieces might actually come together. David's disappearance, Claire's fractured stories, the whispered names, the missing footage, it all pointed toward something tangible, something explainable. The hidden truth was within reach, like the faint glow of a lighthouse slicing through a thick fog. There was an old security log tucked away in an archived file no one wanted to touch, found buried beneath layers of bureaucratic oversight and official indifference. That file spoke of a strange incident years ago, eerily similar. A soldier, also black, vanished under mysterious circumstances after arriving at the same airport. A case closed quickly, labeled a suicide, a mental breakdown, and swept under the rug with whispered reassurances that it was an isolated tragedy. The timeline, the details, they lined up with David's friend's story in ways that sent a shiver down your spine. The mystery uncovered seemed to make sense, At last, a pattern, a link between past and present. You could almost believe you understood what had been happening all along. But then, the single detail slipped in, like a whisper of a lie beneath a comforting truth. The name that David's daughter had spoken, the one nobody mentioned before, didn't match any record in the old files. Not the vanished soldier, not anyone in the military archives. That name was nowhere. It was like a memory glitch, a piece of a puzzle that refused to fit, a fragment of something buried deep in a mind unwilling or unable to face it. And suddenly, the entire neat explanation fell apart, unraveling like thread pulled loose from a worn tapestry. The past mirrored the present, but not in ways anyone expected. Instead, it was a distorted echo, a shadow of something darker, something more insidious. You feel it then, that cold, creeping unease, like recognizing a face you thought you forgot but can't place, like living through something before but having the details slip just out of reach. It's the feeling you get when a familiar scent, a phrase or a moment from your childhood resurfaces suddenly, accompanied by an ache you can't explain. There's a story here that's been rewritten again and again, not by history, but by those who want to keep it hidden, to reshape what you remember and how you feel. And at the heart of it, lurking unseen, is a force so patient and so deeply personal that it's been watching from the very beginning, threading itself through memory and reality like a slow poison. You don't see it directly, but you feel it, in the spaces between words, in the way shadows lengthen just out of the corner of your eye. It's not a monster with teeth or claws, it's something far worse. It lives in doubt, in the questions you're too scared to ask, in the fractures of your own mind. And the more you try to pin it down, the more it slips away, twisting your perception until you can't trust your own senses anymore. It's the reason why no one speaks of what really happened that night, why the records are incomplete, and why the memories you have feel like a puzzle with pieces from different games mixed together. And just when you think you're beginning to grasp the truth, that maybe you're not crazy, that maybe they lied to you, the final twist crashes through. A recording surfaces, faint and distorted, a voice overlapping with static but clear enough to hear. It's David's voice, calm but urgent, speaking words you never heard before. They're here, watching, and this never ends. And then, the recording cuts out, leaving you in a silence heavier than before. That single fragment forces you to rewind everything, to look back over every word, every shadow, every skipped frame in the footage, and question all you thought you knew. The story isn't just unfinished, it's alive, twisting and turning, and you're caught in the middle of it, trapped between memory and something that refuses to let go. Now, more than ever, you have to ask, how deep does this go? And are you ready to find out what's been lurking in the corners of your own mind all along? You think David's story was isolated, a ghost drifting alone through the shadows of memory and loss. But you were right all along to sense there's something bigger, something darker weaving through the edges of everything. Because David isn't the only one caught in this web, others exist. Faces blurred by time, voices cracked by fear, all bound by a silent knowing that they are part of a pattern no one speaks about openly. They watch from behind screens, across empty rooms, in the quiet moments before sleep, sharing cryptic messages slipped through encrypted channels or whispered in the half-light of dreams that bleed into waking life. You start to see signs, symbols carved into places you never noticed before, glimpsed in found footage from 20 years ago that no one was supposed to see, patterns in photographs that vanish when you blink, names repeated like a code waiting to be cracked. And the chilling truth sinks in. You, the viewer, are becoming part of the conspiracy you thought was only a story. It's a slow suffocation, this feeling, like the walls of your own mind are closing in, tightening around thoughts, and memories you thought were yours but now feel borrowed, rewritten, controlled. The lines between identity and control blur, twisting until you wonder if you ever were truly yourself, or just a vessel for something else's purpose. And just when you feel that creeping doubt settle, A new voice cuts through the haze. A third. Perspective that refuses to be silenced. This observer speaks not from grief or confusion, but from cold clarity, a vantage point outside the chaos but tethered to it in ways you can't yet understand. They tell you what the government never released, what was buried beneath classified layers and sanitized reports, the real story behind those missing soldiers, the unexplained disappearances, and the whispered warnings that nobody wanted you to hear. Their words are neither comforting nor clear, only more questions wrapped in a grim certainty that the force watching you is always one step ahead, pulling strings in a game you didn't know you were playing. The observer doesn't promise answers, only the weight of truth, heavy and unyielding, pressing on your chest as you realize you're caught in something alive and hungry, something that feeds on fear and silence. And with every new message, every distorted dream, the reality you thought you held on to shatters further, revealing a labyrinth where memories are unreliable and control is an illusion carefully maintained. There is no safety in knowledge here, only the deepening dread that the watchers have been watching you long before you even found this story, that your own reflection might hide a stranger's face, and that the truth is less about what happened and more about what they want you to believe. So as you sit with this heavy silence, this quiet charge humming just beneath your skin, the question isn't whether you'll uncover the rest of the story, it's whether you can live with what you find when the veil finally lifts. Because now you know, and knowing changes everything. It's not what happened that breaks you, it's why. When David finally stood alone in the quiet aftermath, the weight of all the unanswered questions pressed down, but deeper than that was a more terrible truth waiting to be faced. Not the facts, not the names or the missing footage, but the raw, unspoken core of it all. What this unraveling reveals about us, about who we are beneath the layers of memory, pain, and denial. There's a moment, trembling and fragile, where the mystery shifts. It becomes less about ghosts or conspiracies, and more about the human soul caught between despair and hope, trapped in a reality that refuses to offer easy answers or escape. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just reveal, it confronts. It forces you to look in the mirror and see not a victim or a hero, but someone struggling to hold on to meaning in a world designed to erase it. David's confession came not in words shouted or written, but in a silence so profound it swallowed the room. He admitted, not to losing his friend to an enemy abroad, but to losing himself in the attempt to carry a weight no one else could bear. He confessed that the line between mourning and madness blurred, that the whispers weren't always outside. They were sometimes inside too, voices calling from the deepest cracks of his mind, where memory fractures and reality distorts. The choice before him was not just about truth, it was about survival. To accept what was unfolding, to believe in the unseen force threading through lives and histories, or to reject it, bury it, and live in the fragile comfort of doubt. It felt irreversible, as if crossing that threshold meant either falling apart completely or being reborn in a new understanding so raw it could save or destroy. You watch him grapple with that unbearable choice, and you realize it's not just David's story anymore. It's your story, ours, a reflection of the fragile, terrifying nature of being human. That space where love, grief, memory, and fear collide in a moment so profound, it feels like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were in. The world shifts beneath your feet, the familiar dissolves into something hauntingly unfamiliar, and you're left suspended in a silence that says more than words ever could. The mystery isn't over, not by a long shot. It's only just beginning to unfold, and so you sit with that unease, that sharp ache of not knowing as the final frame fades. A whisper lingers in the air, a line that cuts deeper than any reveal. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.